This boy was a cold and lonely student, but he wasn't a normal student. In his free time, he was a reaper fighting against an army of elite assassins. He reincarnated into this young body 16 years in the future, but before that, he had been a human weapon. As a child, he never even saw his parents' faces. He was a war orphan. Even as a child, he only had two choices: kill or die. Before he was even 10 years old, he accepted a weapon, and that's how his military training began. The organization trained him to become a merciless weapon with perfect aim. And that's how he became the Reaper of Lives. But during one mission, he was injured while saving a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 5. Even so, he disobeyed orders and told her to get out of there quickly. Crying, the girl ran away. I even felt sorry for her here. The protagonist sat there firmly as the organization approached. The boss, who had trained him since childhood, said that he had created a monster. He believed all of this about him, but in the end, there was no saving him. Then he pulled out a gun and asked for his last words. The cold Reaper simply smiled and said that this was nothing. Then it happened. 17 years later, he reincarnated as a teenager, and he had one simple mission. You already know what it is. A bald man is yelling at a group of young men. Holding a golf club, he asks if the boys think they can just quit now. Frightened, one of the young men tries to explain that no one told them this was the job. Just then, another guy smoking nearby says it's not his problem. Desperate, the two kneel and beg, saying there's no way this is a normal job. Screaming in fear, the young man says he won't pick up an assassin from a crime scene. Then the bald man slams the golf club down on the ground right in front of them. Threatening the boys, he explains that their job is just to transport people without complaining. Then he pulls out a knife and threatens to get rid of the kid right there. Instantly, his friend grabs the bald man's hand, stopping the blow. But the bald man is completely confused by the sudden reaction. The kid in the cap then says not to worry because he'll go alone. Asking the boss to let his friend go, he takes full responsibility. Meanwhile, he gives his friend a thumbs up, trying to say everything will be okay. Shifting to the city at night, the scene cuts to the job's location. Suddenly, a man is hit by a shot that goes right through the door. Realizing it's an ambush, one of the henchmen yells for the boss to get down, but it was too late, and he gets hit in the head as well. Completely frozen, the other 3 men just watch the scene unfold. Lying on the floor, the boss realizes the shot came through the wall somehow. Explaining that a simple drywall partition wouldn't stop that caliber, he gets ready to go in. Inside, the 3 remaining men look at their fallen comrades on the floor. Just then, the white-haired assassin kicks down the door and storms into the room, weapon drawn. Trying to react, one of the men throws an entire table at him. He just watches the object fly toward him without moving an inch. Right behind the table, the last 3 henchmen prepare to fire all at once. But before they could do anything, he fires a single shot that hits all 3 of them. As the bodies fall, he comments that it was impossible not to notice their presence there. He then fires one last shot just to be sure. He then glances at a table where he spots some drinks. With the job done, he simply plunges the hot gun into an ice bucket. He then takes a look at the scene, with bodies scattered all over the room. Hiding behind a pillar, the young man in the cap watches, completely terrified. But in that same instant, the assassin turns and rushes toward him with his gun. Desperate, the kid raises his hands and asks if he's the one they call Dahlia-san. Hearing that, the assassin asks if he happens to be the transporter. With a nervous smile, the kid adjusts his cap and confirms that he is. Soon after, the scene cuts to the 2 of them in the car, driving through the city. Speeding down the highway, they drive at high speed through the night. Inside the vehicle, the young man drives tensely, while the assassin watches from the back seat. Glancing nervously in the mirror, the kid can't hide his concern. The assassin notices he's being watched and asks what the problem is. Trying to play it cool, the kid says it's just because a professional has an incredible aura. Without showing any reaction, the assassin just keeps staring at him in silence. Then, after a moment, the kid musters the courage to ask a question. He starts to say that when he arrived to pick him up, he saw the first floor. Recalling the scene, he asks if the women and children he saw there were also targets. Coldly, he replies that they weren't, but they would have been a nuisance and made a scene. Explaining that his contract says the cleaners handle the bodies, he says it's no big deal to eliminate a few more people. Completely shocked, the kid says he's even worse than the rumors claimed. Hearing this, the assassin just mentions the name Funeral Flowers. Surprised, he asks how the kid knows that name, and the driver explains he heard it from his boss. The kid then explains that they're a group of elite assassins with flower names, and that receiving one is a death sentence. Muttering that the bastard talks more than he should, he seems very annoyed by the situation. But the driver keeps talking, even after realizing he's touched on a sensitive subject. Pointing to the scar on his face, The kid asks if it was made by a knife. He then comments that he wonders who in the world would be strong enough to wound one of the funeral flowers. Just staring at the road, the assassin remains silent, not answering the question. Sensing the heavy atmosphere, the kid starts to sweat in the driver's seat. Touching his own scar, the assassin decides to tell him that there was once a man among the funeral flowers. Telling the story, he says the man's code name was Nightshade, which in the language of flowers is an invitation to death. True to his name, he was an existence that could only be called a reaper, but he was foolish enough to defy the organization's orders. In the end, the assassin reveals that he killed him with his own hands. Hearing the whole story, the kid just says he understands, and the mood gets even heavier. Pointing the gun at his head, the assassin asks if the story was good enough to take to his grave. Not understanding, the kid asks what he's talking about, completely terrified. But the assassin simply puts his finger on the trigger, getting ready to shoot. Explaining why, he says the kid's driving was a perfect escape maneuver to shake off any tails. And above all, he can see the kid isn't truly afraid, despite pretending to be nervous. According to him, nervous people give off a sweat with a very distinct smell, but he doesn't smell that coming from the kid, who seems perfectly calm even in front of him. Gripping the steering wheel tightly, the driver prepares to make a move. He then discreetly presses a hidden button on the back of the wheel. Instantly, he unbuckles and throws himself forward. Completely confused, the assassin doesn't understand what's happening. Suddenly, the car swerves wildly on the road at high speed. Slamming on the brakes with all his might, the kid makes the car skid. He then rams the vehicle straight into the guardrail. Then, he gives a thumbs down as the assassin looks in the rearview mirror. Surprised, the assassin is completely frozen for a moment. Thrown from the car by the force of the impact, he smashes through the door. He then tumbles several times across the asphalt before coming to a stop, but he quickly pushes off the ground and manages to land on his feet. At the same moment, the driver's cap flies toward him like a projectile. Using the distraction, the kid leaps from the car and rushes toward him. Then, with a knife in hand, he prepares to strike a direct blow, but the assassin reacts in time, raising his gun to defend against the attack. With a swift strike, the kid hits the side of the gun with his knife. When he tries to fire, the assassin realizes his weapon isn't working right. The impact and recoil force him backward. Looking at the gun, he realizes the blow damaged it and caused it to jam. Kicking up a cloud of dust, the driver takes the chance to create some distance. He then explains that the side of that model is weak to impact and jams easily. With a smile on his face, he adds that the weapon is surprisingly delicate. Even with the gun jammed, he manages to force one last failed shot. He then realizes that in that split second, the kid hit the weak spot with perfect precision. Yelling at the kid not to mock him, he throws the gun away and pulls out a blade. Wielding the new weapon, he prepares for close quarters combat, but the kid quickly moves toward him with both hands outstretched. Parrying the attack with one palm, the two clash head-on. In that moment, he realizes the nerves in his arm have been completely severed. Seizing the opening, the kid lunges forward and lands a direct hit on his opponent. Taking the blow full on, the assassin's head is thrown back violently. He is then thrown backward and lands flat on his back, unresponsive. Without giving him time to recover, the kid lands another blow while he's down. Lying on the ground, he spits blood, realizing this is no ordinary physical blow. With each hit, he feels his nerves being corroded from the inside. He finally recognizes the effect, comparing it to belladonna poison. Standing over the fallen body, the kid just stares at his defeated opponent. On the ground, the assassin asks who the hell he is, but the kid just calls him a scent fetishist. Remembering that nickname, the assassin finally seems to recognize him. With a smile, the kid asks if he finally remembers, saying it's been a long time. But the assassin insists that's completely impossible. Mocking him, the kid questions the story that he killed him with his own hands. He then remembers that the coward only showed up when he was already on the verge of death. Desperate, the assassin yells that it's a lie, and that he should be dead. And the kid confirms that yes, he did die. He then explains that for some reason, he's alive again. Completely shocked, the assassin can barely believe the idea that he's alive again. He then says something that ridiculous could never be possible. Ignoring the other's despair, the kid simply picks his blade up from the ground. Wielding the weapon, he readies himself for the next move. At this, the assassin regains his composure and asks if his goal is revenge, with the kid considering the idea. Remembering the past, an image of the stuffed rabbit on the ground appears. Thinking about it, the kid says he's not just going to take revenge on them. Vowing revenge, he declares he will turn the entire garden to ash. Scoffing at the threat, the assassin yells that he could never destroy the organization. He then warns that there are now funeral flowers far stronger than he ever was. But before he could finish his sentence, the kid lunges forward and strikes him directly in the neck. With a single move, he finishes his opponent completely, without any hesitation. Leaving the body behind, the kid simply observes the result of his attack. Looking at the fallen man, he tells the bastard to enjoy the show from hell. Changing scenes to a meeting room, several people are seated at a long table. Sitting at the head of the table, the group's leader addresses a woman beside him. With a serious look, he informs everyone in the room that Dahlia has been assassinated. Hearing the news, the woman next to him sits completely still and silent. He then turns to her and asks if she happens to remember someone from the past. Recalling the war, he talks about the man who finished off her benefactor back then. Closing her eyes, she remembers the man who saved her during that conflict. At this, one of the members at the table asks if it was the Japanese police or if the United States was involved. Tapping on his chair, the leader suggests it might be someone else entirely. In any case, he states that it's clear that in their new garden in Japan, gripping the arm of his chair tightly, he prepares to give his conclusion. He declares that some very unpleasant weeds are growing there. Then he orders them to tell the funeral flowers to pull those weeds. The scene cuts to a young man walking down the street with the deadline set for 1 month. Going way back, the story begins on a completely destroyed battlefield. There, amidst the rubble, a young war orphan lived alone, having never known his parents. Huddled in a corner, he just tried to survive however he could amidst the chaos. Until one day, a mysterious man in a suit and an eye patch appeared right in front of him. Holding a pistol, the man offered him a simple choice: die there like a dog. Or he could choose to kill to keep living in this world. Without fully understanding the question, the boy stared at the offered gun. Then, he just reached out and took the second option without hesitation. Soon after, he began a brutal training, learning that hesitation gets you killed first. Over time, he trained with firearms, hitting every target. Moving non-stop, he learned to shoot using his whole body to stay alive. Upon being recruited, he discovered the organization Funeral Flowers was no ordinary assassin syndicate. They actually championed the great cause of protecting world order at any cost. Their targets were mainly dictators rotting the world from the inside, as well as all kinds of drug lords, terrorists, and other threats. The eliminations carried out by Funeral Flowers prevented wars, a necessary evil to save more lives. Just doing what I was told, I followed orders without question. Becoming a killing machine that carried out their great cause, I wonder when it was. It happened when my life, which ran like clockwork, started to go off the rails. At that moment, everything started to fall apart, and the situation became unbearable. After serving the garden for 20 years, the little girl noticed I was sweating heavily and completely pale, but I still defied the organization's orders, even knowing I wouldn't last much longer. And now, I'm dying, but I still have one last thing to do. Handing her a card, I tell her to go to a place where a transporter would pick her up. I then ask her to run away alone, change her name, and start a new life far away. As she holds the paper, I wonder why I did something so stupid and risky, but instead of obeying, the little girl just tears the paper into pieces. Looking at me, she says that no matter what I say, she won't leave without me. Screaming with all her might, she asks what she can do to save me. With a tear rolling down my cheek, I finally remember the reason for it all. It was her eyes that threw my world completely off kilter. Going back a bit, the scene cuts to a ruined, abandoned house. Inside, I was on the floor, surrounded by dozens of vials of atropine sulfate. It's an antidote for nerve gas, but common eye drops only contain a small amount. To think that in less than 20 minutes, she managed to gather so many vials, and on top of that, she did it all by herself, with no help. In that whole situation, surrounded by pursuers on all sides, she just risked her own life to save me like that. Telling me to rest now, she assured me no one was around. So I ask if she has any regrets, since she threw away her only chance to survive. But she says she doesn't want a chance like that, and that she wants me to keep protecting her. A broken clock doesn't work anymore. I tell her I'm an assassin, not her guardian. My old self would never have let something like this happen. But after a moment's thought, I place my hand on her head. I can't live indebted to a child. Extending my pinky, I finally make her a promise. I promise to take care of her until she finally gains her freedom. With a huge smile, the little girl accepts the pinky promise. Cutting sharply to the present, a girl yells and prepares to strike. She lands a direct hit on her brother, sending him sinking into the bed. Completely confused, he wakes up and realizes 17 years have passed since he died. Then his sister tells him it's already 7:30 and he's going to be late for school. As he gets up, he realizes he's somehow living as a simple student. Now on his feet, he calls out to his sister before she leaves the room. Turning back, she comments that he's been acting very strange ever since he fell down the stairs and hit his head. Then she complains that he came home late yesterday and his clothes smelled like smoke. Remembering the night before, the scene shows him burning the car to destroy the evidence. Still suspicious, she asks if he's hanging out with the wrong crowd. Desperate, he makes up a lame excuse, saying he was at a friend's barbecue, but she quickly sees through the lie and says he hates vegetables. He replies that his tastes have changed. Trying to explain, he says the blow to his head affected his brain and changed his preferences. Continuing the excuse, he raises a finger and tries to look as convincing as possible. Not really buying it, his sister just tells him to come down for breakfast. Watching her finally leave, he sighs in relief and thinks about how sharp that girl is. After getting up, he reflects that he's been living a perfectly normal life, but there's a catch. Looking at the picture frame on the dresser, he admits that, to be honest, none of it feels real yet. He then wonders why his consciousness, which died 17 years ago, is now residing in this particular body. Picking up the family photo, he keeps thinking about this bizarre situation. He concludes he didn't just steal the body, since the boy's memories and emotions are still alive within him. It all started 10 days ago, when the body's original owner fell down the stairs and lost his memory of what happened. He then wonders if the blow to the head somehow awakened the memories of his past life. Back in the present, his laptop suddenly beeps, pulling him back to reality. Putting the picture frame back, he decides he needs to deal with something much more important right now. With a determined look, he turns to begin his real work. Sitting at his desk, he puts on his headphones and starts using the computer. Cutting to a dark room, a contact informs him that the analysis he requested is finally complete. Analyzing the chip he took from Dahlia's body, he waits for the result. Remembering last night, he approaches the fallen body to get the item. Searching the coat pockets, he finally finds what he was looking for, but instead of a chip, he finds an old pocket watch. Inspecting the object, he pulls on the top to open it. Then he discovers the chip was actually hidden inside all along. Back in the present, he praises his contact's speed, saying it was worth looking him up. On the other end of the line, the contact says he was shocked to be sought out after more than a decade. But after hearing he actually finished off Dahlia, there was no doubt it was Nightshade. Before giving him the results, the contact asks why he's doing all this. The contact recalls that 17 years ago, Nightshade defied an order to eliminate a father and daughter, and supposedly died. So he wonders why someone like him is alive and attacking the organization again. Getting straight to the point, the contact asks if this is all because of that girl, Lilia. After he died, the organization known as the Garden took the girl away. For all these years, she was kept like a bird in a cage, used as a symbol for the organization. Although she seemed happy in front of others, she actually lived a very different life. Behind closed doors, she was kept locked in a cell, with absolutely no freedom. On top of that, he heard she was treated very harshly and cruelly. So he asks if the reason for all this is to save her from the organization. With his eyes closed, he seems to be reflecting on the whole situation. Remembering the little girl's smile, he recalls the promise he made to her. But when he opens his eyes, he simply says his contact doesn't need to know the reason. He then reminds him of their main rule: no unnecessary questions. Without another word, the contact just stays silent on the other end. Realizing he's as stubborn as ever, the contact finally decides to give in and provide the information. With a beep from the computer, the analysis results finally arrive. Appearing on the screen, the contact reveals the chip-listed Dahlia's next target. Hearing the name, he stares at the screen with a serious, focused gaze. Cutting to the front of a school, several students are walking across the courtyard. At the entrance, a sign reveals it's an all-girls school. In the courtyard, a long-haired girl walks by as other students watch her. As she passes, two classmates greet her and say goodbye with a smile. With a friendly smile, the girl replies, wishing them all a good day. But as she turns away, all the other girls freeze, just staring at her. Outside the school, her friends comment on how popular and amazing she is. Watching from a distance, our protagonist analyzes the situation on his phone. The screen reveals the target's name is Akari Shido, a 17-year-old student. She is the only daughter of the head of one of Japan's largest Yakuza syndicates. And for some reason, she's also the woman the Garden organization is trying to kill. Thinking about the situation, he sees himself as a simple student against a global syndicate of assassins, one with enormous influence stretching across the political and financial circles of dozens of countries, plus a roster of assassins with superhuman abilities, not enemies he can face empty-handed. Looking at the girl's photo, he realizes he needs to use her situation to build the foundation he needs to burn the Garden to the ground. Still watching from afar, he continues to formulate his plan for the future. Still thinking, he finds it strange for a Yakuza's daughter to be at an elite school. With a smile, he turns and starts walking, imagining it must be tough to be her babysitter. Lowering his head, he walks straight straight up to the security guard standing nearby. Instantly, the man threatens him angrily, complaining that this world is no place for amateurs. Staring at the boy, he calls him a kid who's probably never even held a gun in his life. With a smile, he says that unfortunately, he'll have to make his comeback in their world. Standing in the middle of the street, the security guard says that's enough. Adjusting his sleeve, he asks who the boy works for and why he's after the young lady. Turning to the side, he replies that he wasn't exactly following her. At this, the guard clenches his fist and says he doesn't need a direct answer. Getting into a fighting stance, he yells that he'll beat the answer out of him. He then lunges forward with a quick strike, but the boy narrowly dodges. As he evades, he realizes the man's fighting style is boxing. Shouting in anger, the guard then unleashes a flurry of punches into the air. Realizing he missed every shot, he glares at the kid with even more rage. He then stomps hard on the ground, preparing to charge again. Instantly, the boy slides his foot back, maintaining his distance. Without a second thought, he lunges again with a straight punch, but this time, the boy simply catches his wrist in midair, stopping the attack. Seizing the opening, he twists the guard's arm and prepares a counterattack. With a swift move, he steps forward and grabs his opponent's neck, who is left defenseless. Squeezing harder, he executes a takedown that throws the guard to the ground. He then shoves the man away, ending the confrontation once and for all. With the guard defeated, he approaches and tells him to calm down, as he is not his enemy. Staring at the boy, the man remains silent, unsure how to react. But at that exact moment, a voice yells for him to stop right there. Lying on the ground, the guard calls out the young lady's name, surprised by her appearance. Standing in the middle of the street, she watches the scene from a distance, not getting any closer. With a serious look, she says she doesn't know who he is, but tells him to let go of Katagiri. Seeing her attitude, he smiles and thinks about how brave the girl is. In a friendly tone, he says that's fine, as long as she hears him out first. He then invites her for tea, saying he really wanted to talk to her. After a moment of thought, the girl finally closes her eyes and seems to make a decision. Turning her back, she simply tells him to follow her somewhere more private. He then follows her down a narrow alley between two buildings. Going down a flight of stairs, they arrive at a wooden door at the back of a building. Entering the Savannah Cafe and Bar, they finally sit down to talk. Sitting at the table, he remarks that the place is nice, but doesn't really suit a young lady. Annoyed, the guard calls him a bastard, but the girl cuts him off and gets straight to the point. Picking up her teacup, she prepares to ask her first question. Taking a sip, she says that he approached her for a reason, didn't he? He then explains that she isn't his target, but that the real assassin is actually after her. Hearing this revelation, the two fall silent, completely shocked by the news. But he continues, saying her guard won't be able to protect her from Chuka. Not understanding, the girl asks what Chuka is, completely confused. He then reveals they are master assassins, and that not even an entire Yakuza army would stand a chance against them. With a serious gaze, the girl turns and faces him. Leaning across the table, she asks who he is, and what exactly he knows about all this. Without answering directly, he just continues to stare at them in silence. He then explains that he doesn't consider himself an ally, but rather the enemy of their enemy. With a smile, he proposes to eliminate Chuka for her, but in exchange, he'll stay at her estate for a while. Outraged by the proposal, the guard jumps to his feet, ready to lunge at him. With a cold glare, he warns him, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Sitting at the table, he releases a murderous intent that paralyzes everyone. Stunned by the pressure, the guard doesn't know how to react to the threat. Taking a step back, he sits down again, completely intimidated by the situation. Regaining her composure, the girl asks why she should believe him. He then reveals that the other day in Yokohama, 3 executives and their associates were killed. Continuing his explanation, he says that the ones responsible were the Chuka assassins. Suspicious, the guard says that incident wasn't even on the news. Bringing his fingers to his head, he explains that it seems the media was completely silenced. He then reveals that the assassin who killed everyone was one of the Choka, and that the man's codename was simply Dahlia. Completely shocked, the guard yells and asks how the hell he knows all this. Tossing a pistol onto the table, he simply reveals that he's the one who took out Dahlia. Suggesting they run a ballistics test, he guarantees the projectiles will be an exact match. In addition, he mentions that the cleaners who were supposed to get rid of the bodies were eliminated by him. Pointing at the gun, the guard says that means he wasn't the one who killed the 3 executives. With a smirk, he asks if the guard really thinks he'd go to all this trouble if the young lady were his target. Staring at the boy, the young lady seems to be carefully analyzing the whole situation. After a moment, she stands up and says, "Very well, I'll believe your story." She then announces they're returning to the estate and tells Katagiri to get the car. Cutting to late afternoon, the scene shows the entrance of a large, traditional mansion. Inside a room, the girl and the guard wait in silence for a moment. Turning to her, the guard says he's against letting a suspicious bastard like him into their house. But just then, the boy walks into into the room as if he owns the place. Looking around, he points to the second-floor hallway and asks if a ceramic piece up there is real. When the girl confirms it is, the guard explodes with rage, shouting and asking who gave him permission to wander around. Ignoring the outburst, he begins to list the security layout, with one guard at the gate and 2 patrolling teams. In addition, there's another guy watching the cameras in the monitoring room. Completely shocked, the guard can hardly believe what he's hearing. With a smirk, he says it's good she's wearing a bulletproof vest, but that its quality is basically just a lucky charm. Impressed, the girl can't believe that he figured all that out in just a few minutes. Warning her that the assassins coming after her are not ordinary, he tells her to get everyone out of the house. Cutting to a dark, damp tunnel, a rat scurries by in fear. Suddenly, a high heel stomps hard on the ground, its sound echoing. From the shadows, a mysterious figure with a long, white braid begins to walk slowly. With a sinister smile on her face, the woman draws a blade and prepares to attack. He warns them that the people coming are no ordinary assassins, but the security guard shouts, asking why the hell they should obey. He then explains that the guards are useless against the funeral flowers and will only die for nothing. Outraged, the security guard grabs him by the collar, saying they put their lives on the line for her, but the girl interrupts him and tells him to do as the boy says. With a smile, she simply asks him to please follow the order. With no choice, the security guard agrees and walks away to carry out the order. Outside, he tells all the guards to shut up and listen, as it's an order from the boss. Sitting on the floor, he informs her that he sent everyone home, just as instructed. But with a defiant look, he adds that the young miss let him do whatever he wanted. Speaking with the girl, he says he didn't expect her to be so cooperative. She then explains that if assassins are coming, she knew the regular guards would be of no use. In a serious tone, she concludes that when it comes to dealing with assassins, it's best to leave it to another assassin. Surprised, he asks what makes her think he's an assassin. Looking at him, she simply replies that it's because she's seen a real assassin before. She explains that his gaze when he subdued Katagiri was exactly the same as that assassin's. Eyes that look neither to the past nor the future, but only at the present. With a grunt, he adjusts his cap, a bit embarrassed by the comment. Sitting in her chair, she continues her analysis, saying his eyes were a little different from that cold, mechanical gaze that just reaps lives without a thought. In his eyes, she could feel a burning heat and determination, a hatred for something, and a will to achieve a goal at any cost. With the girl's reflection in his eyes, he understands what she means. That's why, she says, she decided to put all her trust in him to handle the situation. He replies that he understands perfectly what she meant. Then he asks about this assassin who had the same eyes as him. She then reveals it was the woman who killed her father, the former head of the Shido group. Recalling the scene, she says she witnessed everything with her own eyes. Curious, he asks what kind of woman she was and how she acted. She describes the assassin as an elegant lady with a gentle smile on her face, and that she simply appeared before her father, as if visiting an old friend. Remembering the attack, she recounts that several guards had their necks slit all at once, and with the same smile on her face, she simply finished everyone off. Wielding her blade, she slit the throats of her father's bodyguards without any mercy. Interrupting the story, he asks her to wait a moment and asks a question. With a serious look, he asks if her knife happened to have a red spider lily design on it. Surprised, the girl asks how he knew such a specific detail. With a smile, he confirms that it was indeed a spider lily on the blade. Annoyed, he can hardly believe that woman is still active after all this time. Suddenly, a loud noise echoes through the room, interrupting their conversation. Looking around, the girl immediately realizes something is very wrong. With a tense look, he asks what she felt. Outside the room, bloody footprints appear on the floor. Standing at the door, the assassin says it's now time for the little boy to get ready to talk. Right after, the door opens and she appears before them with a smile on her face. Lying on the floor, the security guard is battered and bleeding, unable to move. Looking at the fallen security guard, the assassin says this mansion is like a spider's web, with traps scattered everywhere. She realizes there's someone else around. Turning to the security guard, she presses him to reveal who else is hiding there. With a smile, she draws several blades and threatens to play plucking petals with him. Completely terrified, the security guard can only let out a groan of pain. Approaching him, she asks if he has anything to say. But at that exact moment, a foot kicks the nearby wall, drawing attention. Shouting the young miss's name, he is surprised to see her charge forward with a sword. With a determined look, the girl launches a direct strike at the assassin. Completely exhausted after the attack, She takes a deep breath, trying to catch her breath. Still on the floor, the security guard yells for her to get back, worried for her safety. But the assassin simply catches the sword's blade with her knives, stopping the blow. Surprised by how easily it was stopped, the girl just lets out a grunt of frustration. With a smile, the assassin says this saves her some trouble. Picturing the scene, the girl visualizes the death of one of her father's men. With a look of pure terror, she remembers that horrible moment. Standing before her, the assassin says she remembers the little girl very well. Back then, she saw her peeking through the crack of the closet where she was hiding. With a smile, the woman says she's grown up and now has her father's eyes. Staring at the girl, she says those eyes look absolutely delicious. But suddenly, she feels something strange and her eye begins to glow. In the same instant, the assassin lunges forward with a series of quick strikes. Barely dodging, the girl manages to escape the attack and back away. Lying on the floor, the security guard watches the girl fight, completely surprised. At the room's entrance, a silhouette appears, slowly entering the room. In a complaining tone, the boy says he wishes she'd act like a lady in need of protection. With a serious look, he surveys the scene, releasing an intimidating aura. Facing the newcomer, the assassin says she knew there was an unknown spider monster nearby. Charging forward, she throws her blades at him, but the weapons just fall to the ground, embedding themselves in the wood. Meanwhile, the assassin lunges with her main blade for a direct attack. With a serious expression, the boy simply watches her approach without moving. Walking slowly, he positions himself for the coming confrontation. As she advances, the assassin's blade reflects the image of the motionless boy. The girl and the security guard watch, completely shocked by his calmness. With the three of them on one side and the assassin on the other, the tension in the air is palpable. Observing his stance, the assassin realizes this kid is no ordinary opponent. She then recalls that certain martial arts teach you not to take a stance against an opponent with a knife. And the reason for this is quite simple. You can't block a sharp blade with your bare hands. Besides, the arms contain major arteries, and a single cut can be fatal. Therefore, by intentionally lowering your guard, you bait the enemy into aiming for your torso or neck. And when they commit and close in for the final blow, you intercept them with a devastating counterattack. That's the textbook response. Smiling to herself, she acknowledges that knowing the theory is one thing, but executing it is another entirely. To stand still, completely defenseless in front of a sharp weapon requires immense courage and skill. Realizing the trap, she concludes he's definitely aiming for a counter and that she needs to play it safe. But suddenly her eyes widen in surprise at an unexpected move. Two red threads shoot up from the floor, binding her feet and stopping her from moving. Seizing the opening, the boy rushes forward and lands a swift blow to her leg. The impact throws her backward, making her lose her balance completely. The two then back away, creating a safe distance between them in the room. With a smirk, he says he thought he could catch her off guard with that trap. Impressed, she remarks that he's a bold little kid for being the first to attack, but she soon realizes that was a direct hit to her perineal nerve. With a smile, she says, it's been a long time since she fought a Silat user. The perineal nerve is a vital point that, if struck hard, can paralyze movement. Smirking, he says she really knows her stuff, but then calls her an old hag. Annoyed, she says that between the Silat and his foul mouth, he reminds her of a very unpleasant man. Remembering the past, she recalls that over 20 years ago, she had retired from the front lines. Tossing a dagger to the floor, she prepares to begin the training. She then explains that the technique isn't about brute force, but about creating a flow in battle. Kneeling on the floor, the student carefully watches the master's demonstration. But looking bored, he says her words don't seem to be getting through to him. In a combat stance, he says that's fine. He'll play with her a little longer. With a determined look, he lunges forward and snatches the dagger from the floor in one swift motion. He instantly masters the technique and points the blade at her neck. With a smile, he tells her to just teach him the next technique already. Shocked, she realizes the kid was a true monster, having mastered her technique after seeing it just once. The next day, she resigned as an instructor and returned to active duty as a morning flower. Wielding her blade, she decided she needed to hone her skills in real combat once more. Standing beneath the moon, she vowed to perfect her true dance. Back in the present, she faces the boy with a renewed and determined gaze. As the two face off, the room fills with a palpable tension, setting the stage for the confrontation. Turning his back, he says that he never actually hated her that much. Not understanding, the assassin just stares at him with a confused expression. With a smile, he says her advice to pierce the enemy's will before their heart was very good. Surprised by the taunt, she glares at him with an expression of pure rage. Completely shocked, she can hardly believe he's using her own words against her. In a swift motion, he lunges forward and unleashes a series of direct strikes. In a direct confrontation, he manages to twist her arm. In the same instant, the boy squeezes the assassin's elbow with great force. Watching from a distance, the security guard and the girl are completely shocked by the scene. Disarming her, he makes her blade fall to the floor, out of reach. With a quick move, she grabs the weapon, managing to retrieve it. Taking advantage of the opening, she charges at him, holding her blade. With a small cut to his neck, he manages to get away from her for a moment. Screaming in pain and rage, the assassin unleashes a circular slash in the air. Leaping back, the two create a safe distance in the middle of the room. Recognizing the move, he realizes she used the Ivy technique and hasn't lost her touch. This technique is possible because of a condition that gives her unusually flexible tendons. Known as the Ivy, this is the trait that defines her as an assassin. Wielding her blade, she prepares for the next attack, now more focused. She says the fact that he even knows about this only confirms he is Nightshade. With a smirk, he asks what she'll do if he really is Nightshade. Without answering, the assassin just stares at him in silence for a moment. She then thinks that she doesn't know what kind of logic could make that boy Nightshade, but her instincts are screaming that the person in front of her is the same monster she has been hunting all this time. With a menacing aura, she readies herself for the final attack. Stepping forward quickly, she prepares to show him her true dance. Leaping into the air, she says her dance is even more beautiful and faster than before. Wielding her blade, she invites the boy to witness her ultimate technique. Slashing through the air, she advances with a series of rapid attacks. With her blade gleaming, she unleashes her most powerful technique, the Dance of Death. Watching from afar, the girl and the security guard are completely shocked by her speed. Advising the two, he tells them not to be fooled by the blade's trajectory. With his fists clenched, he parries all of the assassin's blows. Completely shocked, they realize the boy is parrying the blade with his bare hands. With a determined look, the girl just watches the scene from a distance. But even so, the boy continues to parry the blows with his fists. Annoyed, he thinks that if he still had his old body, he wouldn't have let her touch him. Suddenly, he notices something strange, and his eyes widen in surprise. He then remembers that red spider lilies are poisonous, and that this is common knowledge. With a smile, the assassin tells him not to worry, as the toxin only causes muscle paralysis. The image of a red flower being cut appears, symbolizing the poison's effect. Screaming that she will be the one to reap his life, she lunges forward with a new series of attacks. Losing his balance, he feels the poison's effect paralyzing his movements. Noticing the opening, the assassin shouts, "Now!" and moves in for the final blow. In a swift move, she breaks free from the barrage of attacks from the Dance of Death. With a single blow designed to kill without fail, she prepares to end the fight. Charging with everything she has, she unleashes the final attack at him. The blow lands squarely in his chest and she celebrates her victory. With a satisfied smile, she prepares to savor the moment. Suddenly, he appears behind the assassin and prepares to strike. Completely surprised by the attack, she screams, not understanding what is happening. And just like that, he zips past her in a flash, leaving her completely behind with no chance to react. With his red eyes glowing, Kei Kisaragi's presence looms over Lycoris. Grabbing her by the neck, he lifts her off the ground with just one hand. Holding the assassin, Kei Kisaragi stares directly into her eyes. From the force of his grip, Lycoris spits up blood, completely immobilized. But suddenly, her dagger is thrown through the air toward him. At the last second, Kei manages to catch the weapon by the hilt before it hits him. He then plunges the blade deep into Lycoris's chest. Even wounded, she keeps staring at her opponent with a focused gaze. In a nearly strengthless reaction, she raises her hand, trying to strike Kei Kisaragi, but he reacts and slams Lycoris to the ground, turning the tables. Kei Kisaragi then says something to her as she lies helplessly on the ground. Defeated, Lycoris can only manage to say something back to him. Standing up, he looks down at his opponent's body. In the background, Akari Shido and Katagiri watch the scene, motionless. A view of his leg shows that Kei Kisaragi was also injured during the fight. Feeling the effects of the battle, Kei Kisaragi finally lets out the breath he was holding. Seeing this, Katagiri approaches and asks if he was poisoned in the fight. He replies that he only managed to delay the poison's effects using his breathing. This is a tactical breathing technique, used to control the body in extreme situations. Katagiri then offers to call a black market doctor who serves the Shido group. Refusing the help, Kei Kisaragi puts on his cap and says that every assassin carries the antidote with them. Akari and Katagiri just watch, not understanding what he's doing. Right after, Kei Kisaragi shows them a pocket watch he took from Lycoris, saying he found the next clue. Analyzing the object, he believes it might hold the answer to who wants him dead and why. Hearing this, Akari Shido remains silent, just looking at him. Elsewhere, the scene cuts to one of the buildings in the Shido group complex. Inside, Katagiri is sitting down as he recovers from the battle. On the floor, a first aid kit is open with several items scattered around. Kneeling in front of him, Akari Shido finishes bandaging her bodyguard's wounds. After she's done, Katagiri asks if she's okay and if she got hurt. Finishing with the wounds, Akari tells Katagiri that they need to stop this. Remembering the fight, she says that after seeing what happened, she now understands the situation. She continues, saying that the power Kei Kisaragi displayed isn't human. Memories of the fight show the strength and speed he used against Lycoris. According to Akari, that level of combat is on a completely different dimension from gang fights. Lowering his head, Katagiri admits that with the power he currently has, he is no longer able to protect his former boss's daughter. Hearing that, Akari Shido just watches her bodyguard. At that, Katagiri stands up and says he won't allow her to get involved in this world of monsters. He then asks her to run to a safe place while he handles the gang's affairs. But suddenly, a voice speaks up, commenting on the option to run. Turning around, they see Kei Kisaragi standing at the door, staring at them. He then looks directly at Akari Shido with a calm expression. Maintaining her composure, Akari stares back at Kei, not looking away. He then says that she's not an innocent student, but the daughter of Shido, saying that the fate of blood and violence is engraved in her. Kei Kisaragi explains that it's part of her very being. He continues, saying it's like a curse that no matter where she runs will eventually catch up to her. Unable to accept that, Katagiri yells at him to stop acting like he knows anything. Ignoring the bodyguard, Kei holds up a laptop and states that he's found the name of the client behind the attack. Hearing this, both Akari Shido and Katagiri are completely stunned by the revelation. He then explains that an informant analyzed the data from the pocket watch at high speed. Holding back the information, Kei asks if they don't want to know the name of the culprit who sent the assassins. Akari then tells him to stop stalling and just say what he found out. At that moment, Kei gets ready to open the laptop and show the result of his investigation. Revealing the screen, he shows that the client is Masaya Kuroki, an aide to the Shido group. Katagiri reacts instantly, unable to believe that name belongs to the real traitor. Akari then explains that Kuroki was a man her father took in and who rose through the ranks at an unprecedented speed. Remembering him, Katagiri knows the guy is incredibly good at handling the organization's illegal businesses. Running casinos and underground fighting rings, he manages to generate a huge amount of money. Thanks to this, he pays a massive sum to the gang, strengthening his position. Katagiri continues, explaining that even as an outsider, it was a given that Kuroki would become an executive. Interrupting the explanation, Kei Kisaragi says he probably wasn't satisfied with just becoming an executive. He reveals that the hired assassins, like Dahlia and Lycoris, are part of a larger group. Explaining the plan, Kei says Kuroki joined an organization called The Garden to eliminate the Shido leadership. Together, they plan to eliminate the boss, the veteran executives, and also the boss's daughter. His ultimate goal was to sit on the throne of the Shido group and use its power to unify the underworld. At this, Kei questions if this is really the complete plan Kuroki has designed for the future. With his red eyes glowing, Kei reveals that his own objective is to annihilate the garden's plans. Turning to Akari Shido, he then asks what she intends to do now that she knows everything. He continues, directly asking if she's still going to insist on the idea of running away. Getting up from the floor, Akari moves toward the room's window. Pulling the curtain, she looks out at the night for a moment. With her back to them both, she tells them not to be ridiculous with that suggestion. Noticing the change in her attitude, Katagiri shouts, pleading with her not to do it. Akari then turns around and thanks her bodyguard, Katagiri, for his loyalty. She faces them both, stating that a pathetic escape without even knowing her parents' killer is not the Shido clan's way. Hearing her determination, Katagiri just clenches his teeth and closes his eyes, saying nothing. Taking off his cap, Kei Kisaragi comments that her decision seems to be made. Akari then replies that she never intended to run from the beginning. She continues, explaining that she knows the wealth she inherited wasn't built legitimately, but then she shouts that she won't hand over the Shido name to a coward like that. Faced with her attitude, Kei Kisaragi just gives a slight smirk. Akari then turns to him and asks for his name, since she hasn't heard it yet. He replies that it's better for both of them if she doesn't know unnecessary things about him. Extending her hand, Akari Shido says she's hiring him to be the power she needs against Kuroki. Then, she offers his reward, his goal of annihilating the garden. Akari then states that she will bet everything the Shido clan has to cooperate with him. Hearing the proposal, Kei Kisaragi just stares at her in silence for a moment. This bet includes the entire entire information network and financial power spread throughout the underworld. Furthermore, it also involves connections that reach into the worlds of politics and business. Analyzing the offer, Kei Kisaragi understands there is no better support for crushing the garden. Shaking her hand, he finally seals the deal between them. Changing scenes to a luxurious building in the city, the night continues peacefully. Sitting on a sofa, Masaya Kuroki wonders what's going on, since he hasn't heard from Lycoris. He then turns to a hooded figure standing in the corner of the room. Calling out the name Campanula, he asks what the person thinks of the situation. With fixed blue eyes, the figure just gives a vague reply. Kuroki then asks if Campanula hasn't heard any news about what happened. Leaning against the wall, Campanula says that looking after Lycoris isn't his job. He continues, suggesting that she might have gotten annoyed for being tasked with finishing off a mere student. Despite the sound of an impact echoing through the room, Campanula doesn't even move. Annoyed, Kuroki stands up and yells at him to stop with the irresponsible talk. Unfazed, Campanula just watches him from under his hood. But before Masaya can finish complaining, the assassin's voice cuts him off. In an instant, Campanula appears in front of Masaya and strikes him on the neck. With the blade at his neck, Masaya Kuroki is paralyzed, not understanding how he was attacked so quickly. Staring at him, Campanula warns him not to get things twisted, as they are only helping because of the garden's objectives. Reinforcing the warning, he says the funeral flowers are not his pawns, forcing Kuroki to apologize immediately. Right after, he pulls the blade away, making a small cut on his neck, and tells him to be more careful next time. After that, the assassin simply backs away, leaving Kuroki alone in the middle of the room. Campanula then stops, leaning against the wall, and just observes his client's reaction. Touching his neck, Kuroki composes himself and says that one student's life won't affect the overall plan. At this, the scene shows that all the most problematic veteran executives have already been eliminated. Now on his feet, Kuroki declares that the Shido group is his, and he will use it to unify the country's underworld. Hearing the plan, Campanula just cracks a smile and says that everything will be done in the name of the garden. 2 days later, night falls on the city again, showing the progress of Kuroki's plans. Inside one of his illegal businesses, we see an underground casino operating at full steam. At the tables, several people are betting high on roulette and card games without a care. Meanwhile, a rich man calmly smokes his cigar next to a woman, enjoying the place. Arriving at the casino, a female figure is received at the main entrance of the hall. Revealed to be Akari Shido, she enters the place accompanied by Kei Kisaragi and Katagiri, all dressed for the mission. As they walk through the hall, Kei watches Akari, who is a little ahead of them. Then, the group approaches a door that leads directly to the casino's VIP area. Showing that the counterattack against the garden is finally about to begin, Kei Kisaragi's eyes glow red. Inside the casino, the roulette wheel spins endlessly. Meanwhile, the slot machines are also in full swing. At one of the tables, cards are shuffled for another round of betting. In the middle of the hall, several guests are having fun, completely unaware of what's about to happen. Just then, Akari Shido makes her way through the casino, closely followed by Kei Kisaragi and Katagiri. Passing through the crowd, Akari turns heads everywhere she goes. Watching the group, 2 people comment that she looks too young to be there. Beside Kei, Katagiri says they're standing out too much in the crowd, but Kei Kisaragi simply replies that everything is going exactly as planned. Flashing back, the scene cuts to the moment the plan was being discussed. Inside a room, Kei and Akari listen intently to what Katagiri has to say. Completely against the idea, Katagiri slams his hand on the table. He then yells at Kei Kisaragi, asking why Akari has to go into enemy territory. Katagiri continues, saying that if it were just about eliminating Kuroki, Kei could have gone alone. Kei then explains that if he eliminated the target and Akari stayed hidden, the group would be left without anyone in charge. Continuing his explanation, Kei says that without a clear leader, the Shido group would collapse into a succession war and be swallowed by other syndicates. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Katagiri is left speechless, but Kei Kisaragi presents a solution, suggesting that Akari, the sole heir, directly challenge the traitor Kuroki. He explains that by doing this, everyone in the group would see who the rightful successor is and follow her without hesitation. Making her decision, Akari Shido's eyes show her complete determination. Turning to her bodyguard, she then tells Katagiri to contact a place called Maison Iris. Next, Akari says she needs a new dress custom-made for the big night ahead. Seeing her resolve, Kei Kisaragi just cracks a smile, satisfied with the plan's outcome. Back in the present, the group finally reaches the door to the casino's VIP area. Already inside, one of the subordinates approaches to whisper something in Masaya Kuroki's ear. Hearing the message, he learns that the young heir of the Shido group is there with 2 bodyguards. Realizing she survived, Kuroki can't hide his irritation at her presence. At that, Campanula suggests the situation is perfect and offers to take care of her right away. But Kuroki dismisses the offer, telling them not to do anything in front of the clients to avoid tarnishing the establishment's reputation. So, he orders his men to treat her like any other guest, with no special treatment for now. Standing in front of the VIP door, the group prepares to enter the main hall. Surveying the area, Katagiri says that Kuroki not coming to greet them only confirms his betrayal. Focused on the objective, Kei Kisaragi says the first step is to drag the target onto the playing field. Hearing the plan, Akari Shido turns and starts walking through the casino. Decisively, she announces she's going to play a little before the action starts. Right after, she approaches one of the many blackjack tables. Walking through the guests, the group reaches a table where a few men are playing. Trying to stop her, the dealer apologizes and steps in front of her. Meanwhile, the players at the table just watch the situation with a mocking look. Then, the dealer informs her that the minimum bet at this table is 1 million yen. Without a word, Kei Kisaragi lifts a black briefcase he was carrying. He then opens the briefcase all at once, revealing its contents. Dumping everything on the table, a mountain of casino chips covers the surface. Faced with the scene, Akari Shido says she doesn't care about the amount, as she doesn't like small bets. As the dealer apologizes, she finally sits down at the table, ready to play. With the game about to begin, the dealer shuffles the cards for the first round. Wishing her luck, he then slides the first card toward Akari Shido. An hour later, the mood at the table is tense and the other players are getting restless. Even the dealer, who was calm before, starts to sweat nervously. Meanwhile, Akari Shido remains calm, just watching the table intently. Piling up a mountain of chips, she keeps winning every round with ease. Seeing the situation, the dealer announces the end of betting for that round. With one of his cards face up, he shows his hand has 5 points. Akari Shido's hand, on the other hand, has a total of 11 points waiting for the next move. Maintaining her composure, she stares down the dealer, waiting for the next card. Feeling the pressure mount, the dealer becomes visibly more tense. He then flips his other card, revealing a total of 16 points on the table. Right after, he draws another card from the deck to complete his hand. But upon seeing the result, the dealer freezes, unable to react. Suddenly, his hand locks up strangely, as if he's having a spasm. Revealing his last card, the dealer shows an 8 of hearts that hits the table. With that move, the sum of his cards exceeds the limit of 21 points. He then declares his own defeat and announces the guest's victory, leaving the crowd in shock. Watching everything closely, Kei Kisaragi just smiles, wondering what exactly is going on. Blackjack isn't just a game of luck. Strategy is now coming into play. By memorizing the cards and calculating the odds, card counting is the key to victory. This is the same strategy used by the famous team of students who won millions in Las Vegas. But Kei Kisaragi's skill is on a completely different level, surpassing even that legend. Memorizing every card dealt, he instantly recalculates the odds of the remaining deck. Using the reflection from his watch, Kei Kisaragi continuously feeds information to Akari through light signals. Analyzing countless variables, he deduces the ideal solution as if he were planning an assassination, calculating everything from the target's behavior patterns to possible infiltration routes. Compared to reading a battlefield, analyzing the 312 cards from 6 decks is much easier. This is a high-speed processing skill that only Nightshade can execute. Back at the table, the dealer and the other players grow tense with Akari's winning streak. Calmly, she says she hasn't played enough yet and asks him to deal the next cards. Unable to hide his nervousness, the dealer breaks into a cold sweat. With his legs shaking, he knows that if he loses one more time, he'll have to pay the ultimate price. Just then, one of the men at the table approaches and calls Akari by name, surprising everyone. Turning to him, Akari Shido says it's been a while since they've seen each other. Stopping in front of the table, Masaya Kuroki says that if he'd known she was visiting, he would have come to greet her. With a smile, he continues to stare directly at Akari from where he stands. Beside her, Katagiri says that's the most blatant lie he's ever heard. Ignoring the comment, Kuroki looks at the pile of chips she's won on the table. He then steps closer, looking at the girl sitting before him. Clapping his hands, Kuroki congratulates Akari on her wins and offers to pay her out. Pulling a wad of cash from his pocket, he says it's a celebratory gift. Offering the money, he suggests she use it to take a friend out for a bite to eat. But Akari Shido cuts him off, saying the rat that settled in her father's castle has gotten quite fat. Hearing the taunt, Masaya Kuroki's smile vanishes instantly. Then, Akari accuses him of playing king with the help of someone called the florist. Feeling the weight of the accusation, Kuroki's expression changes completely. Confused, the other men at the table wonder who this girl is and what a florist is. Staring at Akari, Kuroki says it would be best for her to end this little game right here. Agreeing with him, Akari Shido stands up from the table abruptly. Standing, she says she's tired of card games and wants something more. Facing Masaya Kuroki, she asks to take part in the most popular attraction in this place. Kuroki just watches her in silence, waiting to see how far she'll take this. With a challenging look, he then asks if she's talking about the Blood Cage. It's an underground martial arts arena located in the casino's basement. Akari then proposes that they each send a piece into the ring, and the last one standing wins. Trying to dodge, Kuroki says that unfortunately, there are no fights scheduled for today. But Akari cuts him off, declaring she'll bet everything she inherited from her father on this fight. Against her bet, she demands that Kuroki put the entire casino on the line. Shocked by the proposal, he realizes this is a succession dispute for the Shido group. Meanwhile, Akari watches him, knowing this is a historic and insane wager. Pressured, Kuroki understands that if he refuses the challenge, his reputation will plummet. With a slight smile, Akari taunts him, asking if he's really going to run from the fight. With no way out, Masaya Kuroki just grits his teeth, accepting her challenge. Finding the proposal interesting, Masaya Kuroki faces Akari, who remains with her arms crossed. With their faces close, Kuroki accepts her challenge, calling the girl a brat. Standing a little behind, Kei Kisaragi watches the interaction between them without a word. Seeing the plan worked, a faint smile appears on Kei's face as he realizes the enemy took the bait. Elsewhere in the casino, the scene cuts to the door leading to the VIP area. Soon after, the image shows another door, much simpler and with no markings. Inside, Campanula is sitting alone in a dark room, staring at several monitors in front of him. On one of the monitors, he watches the live feed from the security camera filming Akari and Kuroki. Focusing the image, he zooms in on Kei Kisaragi's face, who is still standing behind Akari. Upon recognizing his face, a manic and disturbing smile appears on Campanula's face. Changing scenes, two guards are seen guarding a basement elevator entrance. As the camera moves closer, the two men remain still, protecting access to the area. Just then, the doors open, revealing a dark corridor that leads to the fighting arena. In the arena, a crowd of people screams and cheers, completely hyped for what's about to happen. Suddenly, the lights of the blood cage turn on, and a voice announces the start of the event. Welcoming the crowd, the announcer's voice echoes through the blood cage. Next, he announces that although nothing was planned, a very special last-minute fight has been arranged. Standing between the two fighters, the announcer says that everyone present is incredibly lucky. Announcing the first participant, he introduces the man fighting in the red corner. Flexing his muscles, the arena's undefeated champion, Takeshi, the destroyer Kinjo, prepares for the fight. Right after, the announcer points to the other side and introduces the challenger from the blue corner. In the other corner, Kei Kisaragi faces his opponent without showing any reaction. Introduced as a mysterious, unnamed fighter, Kei simply adjusts his tie. Seeing his physique, some men in the audience start to laugh, doubting he'll last a minute. Then, Katagiri explains that Takeshi Kinjo is the undefeated king of the arena, a karate expert who has sent his opponents to the hospital. Questioning the outcome, he asks if Kei Kisaragi can really win this fight. Without looking away from the ring, Kei remains still as Katagiri warns him about his opponent, but he just exhales slowly and replies that he's not a martial artist. Explaining the rules, the announcer says that the use of weapons is forbidden, but everything else is allowed. Then, Takeshi Kinjo faces his opponent with a smile on his face, ready for combat. In the middle of the ring, Kei Kisaragi just stares at his opponent, waiting for the signal to start. Immediately after, the announcer shouts into the microphone and signals for the fight to begin. Advancing quickly, Takeshi Kinjo charges at him. Taking the first hit and defending with his arms, Kei is thrown back by the impact. Taunting him, Takeshi Kinjo yells and asks what's wrong with the kid in the suit. Continuing the attack, he unleashes a series of blows that Kei manages to block. In the audience, the men shout and cheer for Kinjo, telling him to end the fight quickly. From a private box, Akari Shido and Masaya Kuroki just watch the fight from a distance. Analyzing the situation, Kuroki realizes something is wrong with the fight. He then comments that the boy is deflecting the core of Kinjo's blows. Without moving from his spot, Kei Kisaragi continues to defend against his opponent's attacks. Moving his body, he dodges and blocks every blow that comes his way. With a cigarette in his mouth, Kuroki says it's a pretty amusing parlor trick. Beside him, Akari continues to watch the fight intently without saying a word. Kuroki then tells her that martial arts are different from the world they live in. In a lawless place like this, victory isn't determined by some cheap technique. He finishes by saying that what really decides a fight is pure, irrational violence. Finishing his sentence, he glares at Akari, who shows no reaction. Grabbing his arm, Akari stops him from continuing the threat. Sitting down again, Kuroki says he'll have to teach her a lesson after the fight is over. He then adds that every pet needs discipline. Beside him, Akari just remains seated as he holds his cigarette. Breaking the silence, Akari says it's a joke for him to try and put a leash on her. Looking directly at him, she finishes by saying that a mutt from the garden makes her sick. At that, the expression on Kuroki's face changes completely as he hears her taunt. Right after, he forcefully puts out his cigarette in the ashtray in front of him. Getting up from his chair, he leans forward and shouts towards Kinjo in the ring. But as he looks at the fight, he realizes something unexpected is happening. Focusing on the ring, sweat can be seen pooling around Kinjo's feet on the floor. Completely out of breath, Kinjo clenches his fists, not understanding the situation. On the other side, Kei Kisaragi stands still and unscathed, just watching his opponent. Watching the fight, Katagiri notices that Kinjo is the one getting tired, even though he's the one attacking. Then, Kei Kisaragi asks what's wrong, questioning if his opponent can't even lift a finger anymore. Not understanding what's going on, Takeshi Kinjo tries to react, but it's too late. Charging at him, Kei Kisaragi lands a kick that hits him square on. With the final blow, Kinjo is thrown to the ground, completely defeated by the surprise attack. Lying in the middle of the ring, steam rises from his body, showing the force of the blow he took. In the audience, all the guests are in a state of shock, unable to believe what they just saw. Even the event's announcer is frozen, unable to say a word. In the ring, the referee starts the count as Kei Kisaragi and Katagiri watch the fallen body. Sighing, Kei explains that the first step to taking down a beast is to break its fangs. Not understanding at all, Katagiri turns to the side, but sees no one. Suddenly, the announcer's body drops to the floor, knocked out by a mysterious blow. Confused, Katagiri turns towards Kei Kisaragi, completely lost about what's happening. In the middle of the crowd, a man falls to the floor as a hooded figure appears behind him. Startled, one of the guests sees black smoke approaching him. Then, the smoke passes by him and his friends, without them realizing what's happening. Not understanding the situation, they wonder what's going on, completely lost. Walking among the fallen bodies, Campanula moves through the audience, taking down everyone in his path. With a swift blow, he hits another guest, who drops to the floor without reacting. Standing over a pile of bodies, Campanula prepares to face his next target. Leaving a trail of destruction, he knocks out everyone present, scattering their bodies across the floor. With a serious look, Kei says the casino doesn't seem very hospitable to its guests. Unfazed, Kei asks what he thinks he's doing here. With a smile, Campanula says he's the one who will close the curtains on this show. Sitting on one of the ring's barriers, he continues to explain his role in all of this. He then says he can't have actors improvising and ruining the prepared script. Hearing this, Kei Kisaragi just stares at him, not understanding what he means by script. Campanula then explains that if Akari's team wins, all the work they've done so far will be wasted. At this, the scene shows the ring with Kinjo on the ground, exactly as Kei Kisaragi planned. With a smile, Campanula says he'll have to make it look like this fight never happened. From a distance, Masaya Kuroki just nods and says he'll leave everything in his hands. Turning to Kei, Campanula apologizes, but says he'll have to interfere. Lunging at Campanula, Kei unleashes a high kick towards him. Noticing the attack, Campanula analyzes it as a lethal blow aimed at his artery. Then, Campanula identifies him as a Silat user and asks about his style. As a traditional martial art from Southeast Asia, Silat is known for its combat effectiveness. There are hundreds of different styles. Some focus on hand-to-hand combat, while others specialize in the use of bladed weapons in their movements. And there are also those focused mainly on knife techniques and joint locks. Back to the fight, Kei Kisaragi's eyes glow red, ready to react. Moving at an absurd speed, he begins to block Campanula's series of blows. With his attacks being defended, Campanula stares at Kei with fixed eyes. Using his hands, Kei Kisaragi manages to intercept another direct blow. But Campanula uses a different move, and lands a blow that throws him back. Launched by the impact, his body is thrown forcefully across the ring. Using one hand to brace himself on the floor, he manages to stop his momentum. With blood on his face, Kei Kisaragi gets up, facing his opponent again. Watching the scene, Katagiri is shocked to see that Campanula took down Kei with just one blow. In the private box, Masaya Kuroki smiles with satisfaction, while Akari Shido watches the situation intently. Showing superhuman speed and power, Kei's eyes glow red. Lying on the ground, he then asks if his opponent is a member of the Funeral Flowers. Confirming the suspicion, the boy introduces himself as Campanula, the flower of gratitude. At that moment, an image of a purple flower appears, symbolizing his identity in the organization. Clasping his hands, Campanula gives thanks for finding a fun game at the end of a tedious job. Meanwhile, Kei Kisaragi is still on the ground, recovering from the blow he took, but with a smile on his face, he replies that the pleasure is all his. With his eyes glowing, he then says that if Campanula is one of the Funeral Flowers, he can tear him apart without holding back. After the taunts, the two face off in the ring, surrounded by the still unconscious guests. Seeing this, Katagiri just watches the scene, completely speechless. Seated in the VIP area, Masaya Kuroki simply observes the scene unfolding below. Standing over his fallen opponents, Kei composes himself as he faces his next adversary. Just then, young Campanula appears in the middle of the arena, his hands in his hoodie pockets. Noticing the shift in the atmosphere, Kei Kisaragi carefully analyzes his new opponent. With the champion Takeshi Kinjo already defeated at his feet, Campanula faces Kei from across the ring. Then, Campanula cracks a smile and taunts Kei, asking if he's just going to stand there. Without waiting for a response, he rushes forward with absurd speed. Seeing the swift movement, Kei Kisaragi braces for the imminent impact. In the blink of an eye, Campanula is right in front of him, preparing a direct strike. But Kei manages to block the attack at the last second, starting an exchange of blows. During the fight, he remains focused on Campanula's movements to understand them. Taking advantage of an opening, Campanula throws another quick punch toward his face. Tilting his head to the side, Kei Kisaragi narrowly dodges the attack. Continuing the fight, Kei Kisaragi dodges another blow while analyzing Campanula's technique. At that moment, the image of the old assassin Lycoris flashes through his mind. Back in the fight, Campanula attacks again with a direct strike, but this time, Kei Kisaragi intercepts the attack, blocking his opponent's fist. Feeling his arm go numb, Campanula stumbles back a few steps, completely shocked by what happened. As his opponent retreats, Kei just stands still in the same position, simply watching. From above, Katagiri watches the scene, believing Kei Kisaragi has the upper hand. Down in the arena, Campanula realizes Kei hit a nerve in his arm with a precise strike. Remembering a previous move, he understands the same technique was used to dislocate his shoulder. The scene shows how Kei used a specific wrist bone to deliver the surgical attack. Connecting the dots, Campanula finally wonders if that's the death method technique. Hearing the name, Kei Kisaragi smiles and confirms he knows the fighting style. The image then shows an ancient master of an assassination school that was wiped out. Soon after, the silhouette of a man appears from behind, representing the last practitioner of the technique. Finishing his sentence, Kei stomps his foot on the ground, ready for his next move. Charging forward with full force, Kei Kisaragi unleashes a direct kick toward Campanula. With a smirk, Campanula just watches the kick approach. But at the last second, Campanula simply raises his arm and blocks the attack with his forearm. As he does this, Kei's eyes widen for a moment. Seeing his reaction, Campanula points at him with a grin. Immediately, Kei prepares to attack again. However, Campanula starts to move, dodging every attack. Creating multiple afterimages of himself, he evades with fluid movements. Even in the midst of the dodges, Kei Kisaragi continues to observe his opponent. The foundation of fighting is reading the opponent's movements to predict their actions. By analyzing their gaze and center of gravity, it's possible to anticipate the next blow. That's the only way to react to movements that last mere fractions of a second. But watching Campanula up close, Kei notices he doesn't fight that way. He sees Kei's fist moving toward him, and only then does he dodge. Kei then realizes that Campanula is reacting to the attacks only after seeing them. With a swift motion, Campanula hits Kei, sending him flying backward. Tumbling upside down, Kei Kisaragi panics in midair. Campanula then seizes the opportunity and prepares a new frontal attack. The force of the impact slams Kei directly into the arena wall. Seeing the scene from above, Katagiri reacts instantly. At the same moment, the woman beside Kuroki also rises from her chair, but Masaya Kuroki extends his arm, stopping her from doing anything. Lying on the ground, Kei Kisaragi struggles to get up. Watching the scene, Masaya Kuroki smiles and starts talking about the bet they made. In response, Akari Shido glares at him directly from her own room. Staring him down, she warns him to prepare for the consequences. Meanwhile, in the arena, Kei Kisaragi places a hand on the ground and begins to push himself up. Down below, Kei finally gets to his feet, facing his opponents. Adjusting his collar, he appears with a serious expression amidst the smoke. Analyzing the situation, he stares at Campanula in silence for a moment. Hearing that, Campanula stares at Kay for a moment, completely surprised. He then raises his arms and confirms that his condition is indeed special. Explaining further, he reveals that his nervous system developed abnormally due to a treatment. Because of this, his nerves are far more resilient than an ordinary person's. Listening intently, Kay deduces that his reaction speed also stems from this condition. For comparison, Campanula mentions that a normal person takes 0.2 seconds to react to something. Showing an illustration of a reflex, he continues his explanation. He, on the other hand, can react in just 0.002 seconds, just like a cat would. He then reveals that to him, the world seems to move in slow motion. Back in the fight, Kei Kisaragi asks if his own strikes work the same way, and Campanula replies that it's proprioception. In the background, Katagiri just watches the conversation, not understanding a thing. Like him, the woman beside Kuroki is also following the fight intently, but Kuroki just smiles and reveals that his own perception is also abnormally developed. Explaining his technique, Campanula says he can feel his entire body's movement and focus his power on a single point. With this, he reveals that advanced combat techniques are as easy for him as breathing. Finishing his explanation, Campanula pulls up his hood and begins to mock Dahlia and Lycoris. He says all their training was completely useless compared to his natural talent, but Kei Kisaragi ignores the taunt and with a smile asks an unexpected question about his eyes. Caught off guard, Campanula just stares at him for a moment, confused. Kei then explains that with such perception speed, movies must look like a series of still images. Hearing this, Campanula confirms that it's one of the few things that leaves him dissatisfied. Changing the subject, Kei Kisaragi warns that if he has no more tricks, the fight is over now. He then adds that he's going to give a final episode to that boring picture book. Instantly, Kei gets into position, preparing for the final attack. Seeing the change in his stance, Campanula also gets into a fighting position for the showdown. Back in the observation room, Katagiri closely watches the two facing off in the arena. Beside him, Masaya Kuroki just continues to watch the fight with a smile. With his face wounded, Kei analyzes his opponent, whose reflexes are completely abnormal. Because of this, Campanula can easily dodge any kind of normal attack. This leaves Kei Kisaragi with only one chance to win this fight. Believing his only chance is a perfectly timed counterattack, Kei Kisaragi charges forward. He then manages to land a direct hit on Campanula's body, but Campanula just looks at him with a smirk, as if he expected it. Mocking Kei's confidence, he recalls the block that happened moments before. He then reveals that the previous attack was entirely on purpose. Using his super reaction, he manages to grab Kei's wrist before the impact. At the same instant, he prepares a strike with his other hand aimed at Kei's face. The attack lands squarely on Kei's chin, sending him flying backward with force. Revealing it was all part of his script, Campanula explains that he predicted every move. Continuing his taunt, he says Kei was just clinging to false hope. On the ground, only a puddle of water is seen where Kei landed. Seizing the chance, Campanula raises his foot and prepares for the final blow. Standing in the same spot, Kei just watches his opponent approach for the attack. Campanula then challenges him to try another counterattack, saying this will be his end. But Kei Kisaragi simply watches him in silence, without looking away. As he closes in for the final blow, Campanula notices that Kei isn't moving to counterattack, but he ignores it and keeps advancing, certain that the short distance would make any reaction useless. However, Kei Kisaragi just watches Campanula's strike get closer to his face. Feeling a strange sensation take over his body, Kei Kisaragi stands still for a moment. Then, his senses seem to expand, analyzing the environment in a completely new way. The scene cuts back, showing that Campanula's reflexes only work against threats he can perceive. So what happened was an attack so subtle that even he couldn't detect it in time. Because at the exact moment he was thrown back by Campanula's blow, Kei acted. With a swift movement, his fingers lightly touched his opponent's forehead. Using the secret technique of Jalambisa's poison needle, he activated his plan. The technique strikes the facial trigeminal nerve with the fingertips, paralyzing the transmission of sensory information. The attack becomes a delayed poison that activates the moment the target enters a state of extreme concentration. When Campanula's senses sharpened for the final blow, the technique finally took effect. Seeing his opponent paralyzed, Kei asks him what he thought of his final episode. Taking advantage of the opening, he lunges forward and delivers a direct blow to his chest. From the impact, Campanula is thrown far away, and the ground shatters beneath his feet. Completely defenseless, his body flies through the air without any control. Mid-flight, Campanula reacts to the blow that struck him dead on. Landing firmly on the ground, Kei Kisaragi finishes his move perfectly. With the force of the impact, Campanula is thrown towards the wall and ends up falling to the ground. Seeing the outcome of the fight, everyone in the observation room is left completely speechless. Completely down, Campanula stares at Kei's silhouette and asks what he did. Looking at him, Kei Kisaragi simply replies that he only touched him. The scene reveals that Kei never attacked. He just stiffened his leg muscles and lowered his pelvis. Next, he stabilized his spine and locked his upper body. Then he tensed his shoulder and forearm, turning his own body into a single stake. Just like a weightlifter, Kei stiffened every bone and muscle in his body. At that moment, his entire body became a single pillar capable of withstanding hundreds of pounds. In this way, he just transformed his body into a root planted in the earth and remained motionless. So the path of the force Campanula tried to unleash was completely blocked by the tip of that stake. By the law of action and reaction, the kinetic energy with nowhere to go returned to Campanula's own body. In other words, it was as if he had run full speed into a spear stuck in the ground. This was the supreme principle of Chinese martial arts, known as borrowing force to attack. Facing his opponent, Kei Kisaragi confirms he used Campanula's own strength to defeat him. Lying on the ground, Campanula can only watch the winner of the fight from a distance. Then, he finally understands that the earlier conversation about his nerves was a trap. The scene cuts back to the moment Campanula enthusiastically confirmed that he was special. Then Kei Kisaragi reveals that the conversation was just to buy time until the strike's effect reached its peak. Admitting defeat, Campanula laments that his script was broken in such a way. Recalling his past, Kei says that one day, every assassin becomes the prey. Standing before the fallen body, he adds that Campanula's time would eventually come. Hearing his words, Campanula simply thanks him with a final breath. A smile spreading across his face, he thinks that this encounter made the world a little less boring. With Campanula finally defeated, Kei's silhouette is cast over him in the light. With lifeless eyes, Campanula remains motionless on the arena floor. Turning his back, Kei Kisaragi bids farewell to the young assassin and wishes him to rest in peace. But suddenly, he hears a voice calling Kuroki's name and turns around instantly. The scene reveals that Katagiri has come down to the arena and is now beside Kei. Turning towards the observation room, Kei Kisaragi sees Masaya Kuroki holding Akari Shido in his arms. Then Masaya Kuroki points a gun directly at Akari's head, holding her hostage. Seeing this scene, Kei Kisaragi stares intently at Masaya Kuroki. Shouting Kuroki's name, Katagiri moves to protect the other group members. From above, Masaya Kuroki ignores him and tells Kei not to move, holding Akari hostage. With his finger on the trigger, he threatens to shoot if Kei Kisaragi takes another step, but Kei Kisaragi just stares back, showing no reaction. Then Kei simply asks, "So what?" leaving his opponent completely speechless. Hearing the response, Masaya Kuroki freezes for a moment. Continuing the taunt, Kei asks what he thinks will happen after he shoots Akari. For a moment, Masaya Kuroki hesitates, seeming to reconsider his actions. He then tries to calm himself, noticing that Kei still hasn't moved from his position. Seeing that Kei is standing still, Kuroki believes his plan to use a hostage has worked. Believing he has the upper hand, he cracks a smile. Determined to take someone with him, Kuroki prepares to shoot Akari. Then he finally pulls the trigger, without any more hesitation. Seeing what's about to happen, Katagiri reacts instantly. Without moving, Kei Kisaragi just watches the scene intently. Believing he still has the advantage, Masaya Kuroki continues to use Akari as a shield. Trusting his alliance, he clings to the hope that the organization, the Garden, will save him. Just then, Akari Shido breaks the silence and asks him a direct question. Staring intently at Kuroki, she questions him about her father's death. Hearing the question, he looks away for a moment, remembering his old boss. Then Kuroki reveals that her father was planning to dissolve the Shido clan. Hearing this, Akari and Katagiri are completely shocked by the revelation. In a fit of rage, Masaya Kuroki starts screaming that she must be kidding him. He angrily claims that he risked everything for the Shido name. For a moment, Akari closes her eyes as a memory comes to her mind. The scene flashes back to the past, showing Akari beside her father in a peaceful moment. In that flashback, the former head of the Shido group was just smiling at his daughter. Returning to the present, Akari opens her eyes and faces Kuroki with determination. Listening to his story, Akari clenches the side of her dress with her hands. Then she rips the fabric in a swift motion, revealing a hidden weapon. Taking advantage of Kuroki's distraction, Akari prepares to strike. Seizing the opening, she hits Kuroki with a knee strike, and in the same instant, she grabs the small blade that was strapped to her leg. Aiming the blade at Kuroki, she tells him to take responsibility responsibility, but Kuroki reacts by pointing the gun at her, completely losing his mind. Completely desperate, Katagiri shouts Akari's name in concern. Just then, the gun simply slips and falls from his hand to the floor. Looking at his hand, he tries to figure out what suddenly happened. For a brief moment, he realizes a throwing blade is embedded there. From the arena below, Kei Kisaragi's hand remains extended after the throw. Realizing the severity of the wound, Kuroki notices that the tendon in his finger has been severed. Lifting his gaze, he stares at the figure of Kei Kisaragi down below. Seizing the opening, Akari attacks him with a final blow. Taking the opportunity, Akari plunges the blade into Masaya Kuroki's body with a precise strike. With the weapon embedded in his abdomen, he feels the pain of the wound for an instant. Feeling the impact, he screams as the blow completely destabilizes him. Moments later, his body collapses to the ground, finally defeated. Holding the bloodied blade, Akari stares at Kuroki's fallen body. Meanwhile, he reminds her of the clan her father and everyone else risked their lives to protect. But Akari lets down her hair and says she won't throw it all away for her own happiness. With the silhouette of her father appearing behind her, she declares that this is her responsibility. Then she adds that she will bear the consequences as Shido's daughter. Hearing her words, Kuroki gives one last smile and admits he knew he could never beat her. With her opponent finally defeated, the fight for control of the casino comes to an end. At that moment, Katagiri approaches and places his jacket over her shoulders. From the arena, Kei Kisaragi just watches the scene unfold in silence. A few days pass, and the scene shifts to the main headquarters of the Shido clan. Kneeling before the other members, Akari prepares to assume her new position. Before a memorial honoring Masayomi Shido, the succession ceremony begins. From a corner of the room, Kei Kisaragi watches Akari Shido kneel before all the clan members. Then, a ceremonial vessel is brought forward, containing the drink that symbolizes the soul of the Shido group. Holding the object, Katagiri explains that her determination will be tested at this moment. He then asks that, if she is ready, she drink the entire contents in one go. Afterward, the vessel is carefully passed into Akari's hands. Holding the ceremonial object, she prepares to complete the succession ritual. Meanwhile, the other members of the group watch her every move intently. Across the room, the other clan executives also follow the ritual in silence. Without a second's hesitation, Akari brings the vessel to her lips, ready to drink. In a single gulp, she drinks the entire contents under everyone's watchful eyes. Upon seeing this, the group members stare at her for a moment. Finishing the ritual, Akari places her hands on the floor in front of her. Then she bows before everyone and declares herself the fourth head of the Shido group. Finishing her speech, she asks for the continued support of all group members. Standing up firmly, Akari prepares to conclude her speech. Then, in a firm voice, she asks for everyone's guidance and support from now on. In an immediate response, all the clan members bow and declare their loyalty. Meanwhile, Kei Kisaragi just watched everything from a corner of the room with his arms crossed. On that day, Akari Shido officially succeeded as the fourth head of the Shido group, and at that same moment, she appointed Kei Kisaragi as the group's chief advisor. Cutting to the present, Kei is sitting in front of a computer, analyzing the situation. Recalling the facts, he goes over how Kuroki was defeated and Akari inherited the Shido group. With his appointment as advisor, the underworld influence that the garden coveted fell right into his hands. Clicking the mouse, he confirms that he has taken a major step toward his final goal. On the screen, a photo of an adult, Lilia, appears, revealing the true reason behind everything. At that, Kei remembers the promise he couldn't keep that day. Flashing back to the past, the moment he made that promise to a young Lilia is shown. With a huge smile, young Lilia just looked at him, full of hope. Back in the present, he vows to free her from the clutches of the garden organization at any cost. Receiving a notification, Kei sees that the data analysis is complete. He then confirms that this was the data Campanula possessed, which he bought using the Shido group's money. Continuing his investigation, he discovers that the files contained the garden's business plan for Japan. He then discovers the plan involved a massive arms trafficking and drug distribution operation across the country. Seeing this, Kei keeps typing on the keyboard to get more information about the operation. Uncovering more details, he sees the organization was using civilians for deliveries, exploiting unsuspecting students. Furthermore, the files also included the personal information of the people being used in the scheme. Instantly, Kei leans toward the screen, surprised by what he found. Before him, the screen displayed the profiles of several young people being used as couriers by the organization. And among them, Kei recognizes the face of a boy he knew from his past. Flashing back in time, the scene shows a moment when Kei met that same boy at his old job, but he knew the amount of money involved in this operation was on another level. He also deduces that the garden wouldn't entrust all the details of an operation this size to an outsider like Kuroki, so he concludes there must be another funeral flower managing all these secret transactions, and most likely, it would be one of the highest-ranking members within the garden organization. Making a decision, Kei Kisaragi gets up from his chair, ready for his next move. The scene changes to the front of a large high school, with several students entering through the gate. Arriving at the location, he steps onto the school grounds for the first time. Standing in front of the building, Kei watches the other students pass by him. Then he adjusts the tie of his new uniform, facing the high school before him. As the school bell rings, the courtyard fills with students for another day of class. Heading to his locker, Kei Kisaragi grabs the pair of shoes he'll wear inside. Holding the shoes, he stares at them for a moment, remembering his absence. The scene shows that Kei used the flu as an excuse to stay away while he handled the Shido group incident. Standing in front of the lockers, he turns around when he notices movement right behind him. Just then, a group of students led by an upperclassman stops right in front of him. With his hands in his pockets, the group's leader looks at him and asks if he's recovered from the flu yet. Beside them, the boy involved in the delivery operation just watches the situation unfold. Replying to the upperclassman, Kei confirms he's better and calls him senpai. Flashing back 1 week, Kei was in his room analyzing data on his computer. From it, he discovered that Dahlia wasn't familiar with Japan. Because of this, the plan was to hire a local amateur delivery boy to help with the operation. Continuing his research, he saw that an illegally recruited minor would do the dirty work. Faced with this information, Kei Kisaragi just remained silent, staring at the computer screen. Still in the past, Kei Kisaragi typed on his keyboard, looking for a way to contact them. Then he discovers that the meeting point was the very school he now attended. Back in the present, the upperclassman glares at him with an unfriendly expression. Standing before the group, Kei asks about a supposedly interesting part-time job. With a smile, he says he wants in on the job too, surprising everyone. Hearing that, the other students in the group are completely confused by the situation. At that, the boy who was supposed to be the delivery guy points at him and tells him to stay out of it, but the group leader just grins and says he has the perfect job for him. Desperate, the boy tries to argue, saying Kei couldn't handle the task. Losing his patience, the leader grabs him by the collar and tells him to shut his mouth right now. Then he says that if the boy is so worried, he can go along to babysit. Remembering his plan, Kei just watches the scene, aware that he was using the group. Back in the present, he raises his hand and greets the approaching students, but the upperclassman glares at him and tells him to cut the crap right now. Not understanding, Kei Kisaragi just stares at the group of students in front of him. Then, the group leader grabs him by the collar and tells him to stop playing dumb. Reacting instantly, Kei grabs the upperclassman's wrist and his eyes turn red. Seeing this, the upperclassman and his friends freeze when a voice shouts for them to stop. Then another group of students approaches and breaks up the fight in the middle of the hallway. The newcomers face the group of upperclassmen in silence. Looking at the new students, Kei Kisaragi recognizes them from somewhere in the school. The upperclassman then glares at the new group's leader and tells him to stay out of it, but the boy named Ichinoshi ignores him and tells him to let go of Kei Kisaragi immediately. Hearing the command, the upperclassman just stares at him for a moment before responding. He finally lets go of Kei's collar and backs away slowly. Now, the two groups of students just stare each other down in the middle of the hallway. Meanwhile, the red-haired boy approaches Kei and apologizes for what happened. Right after, Akira Ichinos extends a hand to him and asks if he's okay. At that moment, Kei remembers that he is the captain of the kendo club, feared even by the school's delinquents. Shaking Ichinos' hand, Kei Kisaragi says he's fine and thanks him for the help. Holding his hand firmly, Kei just looks at him for a moment. Then, Ichinos reveals that he only intervened because Kaito Saiki, the student council president, asked him to. At that, the student council president introduces himself and says he can't ignore those who break the school rules. Beside him, the council secretary Mio Hasegawa complains that they were fighting even before classes started. Then Jun Sagara, another member of the group, says he's glad Kei wasn't hurt. Looking at the group, Kei realizes they were the second tier of the most influential students in the school. Right after, Kaito Saiki offers to report the incident to the teachers, adjusting his glasses, but Kei Kisaragi refuses the help and says there's no need to worry about it. Hearing his reply, Saiki says that if he has any more problems, he can come find him. As the group walks away, Kei straightens the collar of his school uniform. Changing scenes, the red-haired boy goes to the school rooftop. Up there, he lights a cigarette and tries to relax for a bit, but suddenly a voice interrupts him and asks what's going on here. Turning around, he sees Kei Kisaragi standing at the door, who reveals he was just kidding. On the rooftop, Kei Kisaragi and the red-haired boy talk alone. Apologizing for what happened, The boy says he tried to stop the others but couldn't. But Kei ignores him and asks him to tell him what happened while he was out of school. He then asks if anything happened during his absence, staring intently at the boy. Surprised, the boy notices that Kei Kisaragi seems to have changed somehow. Faking a cough, Kei jokes that it must have been because of the bad flu he caught. But the boy cuts him off and says he's been different since before, as he would never get involved in illegal jobs. Kei Kisaragi just replies that people change and insists that he answer the question. Hesitating for a moment, the boy finally reveals that after Kei left for the job, they were called by the delivery contractor. He says they were told that Kei messed up the pickup and no one could blame him for running away. But Kei Kisaragi cuts him off, saying he didn't run away, and asks what happened next. The boy reveals that since then, they've been forced to work for free to fix things. Their task was to collect mysterious packages without knowing what was inside. Afterward, they had to leave these packages in a coin locker in Shinjuku, and to get there, they had to use the Shonen Shinjuku line at a fixed time between 4 and 6 p.m. Analyzing the information, Kei Kisaragi deduces that the busy train line makes surveillance difficult, and the rush hour makes teenagers less suspicious. The boy then reveals that they know it's dangerous and that, in truth, they all wanted out. Hearing him out, Kei says he doesn't blame him for feeling that way. He understands that the organization unloads the products at the port of Yokohama and uses students for transport, thus avoiding police checkpoints. Desperate, the boy says there's no way out, as they have all their information. But Kei Kisaragi pats his shoulder and says he'll handle the situation. Breaking into a cold sweat, the boy shouts in despair that he can't ask for help and is completely trapped. Observing the boy's fear, Kei Kisaragi just watches him intently. As he walks away, Kei assures him that he'll solve the problem, while the boy calls out his name. Waving from a distance, he tells the boy not to go anymore if they call him again. Confused, the boy tries to call out to Kei, who is already opening the rooftop door. Alone again, he just watches the door close, not understanding anything. Wondering who Kei really is, the boy looks on with a surprised expression. Walking down the stairs, Kei Kisaragi prepares for his next move with a dark look in his eyes. The scene ends with him adjusting his tie, ready to shake up the underworld by infiltrating the operation. The scene shifts to the front of a small 3-story building. Approaching the door, Kei Kisaragi opens it and steps inside. Once inside, he finds himself in a completely empty warehouse. Looking around, Kei realizes the place has been completely cleared out. Standing in the middle of the room, he concludes that no one is there anymore. The scene flashes back, showing the same warehouse now occupied by a group of men. A bald, muscular man was leading the group, holding a tool in his hand. Scanning the floor, Kei wonders if they moved the hideout after Dahlia's elimination, but he quickly dismisses the idea since they aren't the ones in charge. He then concludes that someone is pulling the strings behind the scenes, the regional flower in charge of the operation. Taking his phone from his pocket, he prepares to make an important call. With a smile, Kei notes that he now has a powerful information network at his disposal. The scene changes to the Shido Group's headquarters, showing the door to the main office. Inside, Akari is sitting at her desk, working on her computer. Just then, she gets a call from Kei Kisaragi and answers it immediately. On her phone screen, the call from the Supreme Advisor appears. Answering the call, Kei asks her how the new boss job is going. Sighing amidst a pile of papers, Akari complains that she's busy cleaning up Kuroki's mess. Kei then advises her not to drop out of school, and she asks him why. On the other end of the line, he explains that it's important to keep one foot in the normal world to maintain your balance. Right after, Kei gets straight to the point and asks for her help in investigating a crew that moves illegal goods. Hearing this, Akari reveals that this operation was already one of her biggest headaches. She explains that her father, the former boss, never got involved in that kind of dirty business, and so she concludes that Kuroki was acting behind her father's back, setting up the operation on his own. Continuing the topic, Kei says he'll send the address of the transporter's hideout, even though it's already empty. Akari readily agrees to investigate the case and promises to share any new information she finds. As the conversation winds down, she falls silent for a moment, lost in thought. But on the other end, Kei waits, and Akari asks if something is wrong. Then she deduces it herself. If Kei is making a move, the garden must be involved. Because of this, she ends the call by telling him to be very careful. Ending the call with a smile, Kei says goodbye to the fourth boss of the Shido group. Walking down the street at dusk, he makes his way back home. The scene shifts to the neighborhood, where the house lights are already on. At his house, a warm, hearty meal was already served on the table. Sitting at the table with his adoptive family, family, Kei Kisaragi eats dinner in a peaceful atmosphere. Concerned about his health, his adoptive father asks if he's feeling well again. Relieved, his adoptive mother says he had no appetite and encourages him to eat. Watching the family laugh and talk, Kei reflects on his past as an assassin. He then remembers how little Lilia was the first one to give him a heart, but the image of his past self, bloodied and defeated, flashes in his mind. As the family continues to chat, he thinks about how he never imagined he'd get this peaceful life back. Recalling his own advice, Kei realizes he was talking to himself the whole time. So he decides that if it's to free Lilia from the garden, he doesn't mind getting his hands dirty again. However, he swears he has no intention of throwing away the peace he's found with his family, because now he was no longer a killing machine, but a human being named Kei Kisaragi. With the image of his family in mind, Kei Kisaragi vows to protect this place and always return to it. A few days later, the scene changes to the Yokohama port area. From the top of a building, Kei uses binoculars to observe the activity below. With his phone in hand, he talks to Katagiri, who is on the other end of the line. Using the Shido group's influence, Kei investigated all the businesses at the port to find the hideout. While talking to Katagiri, Kei Kisaragi finds the formal tone he's using on the call a bit strange. On the other end, Katagiri says it's his duty, as Kei is now the group's supreme advisor. Even though Kei tells him there's no need for formalities, Katagiri insists on maintaining a respectful tone. He then continues his report, informing him that their new hideout is a warehouse on Pier 7. Looking at the location through his binoculars, Kei sees two men guarding the warehouse entrance. Katagiri adds that there are traces of firearms, a very high level of security for a simple hideout. Sitting on the edge of the building, Kei concludes that this makes sense, as the garden wouldn't just stand by. With the losses of Dahlia, Lycoris, and Campanula, the organization would definitely be on high alert. He then understands that this base wasn't just for business, but a hunting ground to ambush him. Seriously, Kei Kisaragi lowers his binoculars, feeling a bit insulted by the trap. On the other end, Katagiri is silent for a moment, not understanding. With red eyes, Kei says they're underestimating him with this level of security. As night falls, the port warehouses are shown under the moonlight. Guarding the entrance, one of the men outside lights a cigarette. Suddenly, Kei emerges from the shadows and grabs the man's face with both hands. Clamping his mouth shut firmly, Kei prevents him from calling for help. Next, he prepares to attack the second guard from behind. Without wasting a moment, Kei lands a direct blow to the second man's face. Right after, he stands over the two fallen men on the ground. Looking toward the warehouse, he says he'll start by clearing the front area. He then walks toward the warehouse entrance, wondering which flower is blooming inside. Meanwhile, inside the warehouse, other goons were just killing time. Sitting among crates, they complained about the boredom of waiting around. Two of them were talking, one complaining that no one would ever show up, but the other one scolded him, telling him to take the job seriously. Pulling out a gun, he revealed he'd gotten his hands on a new toy. With a smile, he excitedly showed off the pistol to his partner. Unimpressed, the other guy just ignored him, saying gun nuts were hopeless. Suddenly, the warehouse door burst open with a loud bang, startling everyone. Emerging from the shadows, Kei Kisaragi grabbed one of the goons by the face. Squeezing hard, he stopped the man from screaming or making any noise. Startled by the intrusion, the man with the gun spun around and aimed at Kei. In a swift move, Kei dodged the gun's barrel, avoiding the shot. Then, he grabbed the shooter's face with his other hand. Using both hands, he dismantled his opponent's pistol in the blink of an eye. With the gun completely disassembled, its useless pieces clattered to the floor. Still holding both men, Kei Kisaragi stared at them for a moment. Then he delivered a precise blow to one of their necks, taking him down instantly. With both goons down, Kei spotted a camera recording the room. Pulling out a knife, he plunged the blade into the camera before it could reveal his infiltration. Pinning the device to the wall, Kei stared at it in silence. The scene shows that a neck chop, like in the movies, doesn't work in real life. What Kei did was strike a deep nerve plexus, causing instant loss of consciousness. Standing over the bodies, he reflected that he had no intention of taking the lives of disposable recruits. Bending down to pick up the gun parts, he prepared for his next move. Examining the pistol parts, he noted that he'd never heard of the manufacturer before. Analyzing the weapon, he realized the underworld firearms market had changed a lot in the last 17 years. The scene shifts to the warehouse interior, showing a long, lit hallway. Further in, a group of men were gathered in a room playing cards. Suddenly, One of them stood up and warned the boss that several security cameras had gone offline. Hearing the warning, the group's leader asked what the guards outside were doing, but he soon realized they weren't responding and concluded an intruder had arrived. The scene shows several high-caliber weapons leaning against the wall, ready for combat. Instantly, one of the men grabbed a weapon and loaded it. With everyone armed, they took their positions and aimed at the room's only entrance. Gripping his weapon tightly, the leader braced for the attack. As they waited, they heard a noise from above, on the warehouse ceiling. Suddenly, a forklift plummeted from the floor above, crashing right through the ceiling. Without a second thought, the boss screamed for everyone to fire at once. Amid the dust and debris, they wondered if they'd hit their target. But suddenly, the leader was struck right in the middle of his forehead. As his body fell backward, the other men had no time to react, because Kei Kisaragi emerged from the shadows and attacked all three at once. With the men down, Kei bent over and started collecting the weapons from the floor. In the blink of an eye, he charged the remaining goons, ready for his next move. Completely surrounded, the remaining henchmen tried to shoot but couldn't hit their target. The scene explains that Kei uses saccadic suppression, a blind spot in human perception. The brain fills in this gap, but Kei's technique exploits this perceptual flaw. By abruptly changing his movement vector, he creates the illusion of teleportation. The scene shows a tactical flashlight attached to one of the goons' weapons. With all his opponents down, the last man standing wondered if the fight was finally over. But Kei Kisaragi appeared behind him and finished him off with a final blow. With the weapon in hand, he analyzed it and concluded it was a high-quality pistol. Standing over the bodies, Kei reflected that arms dealers have already accepted the risk of death. Still, he regretted not finding who he was looking for at the location. Leaving the bodies behind, he found a laptop left on a table. Approaching the device, Kei wondered if he would find any useful information on it. Powering on the laptop, he started typing, searching for clues about the operation. Analyzing the files, he fell silent for a moment, staring at the screen. Getting up from the chair, he prepared to leave the warehouse. With a determined look, Kei Kisaragi readied himself to finish his mission. Then he spots an explosive under one of the vehicles in the warehouse. The scene changes to an aerial view of the port at night. Just then, a hooded figure watches everything from a distance, holding a cell phone. A moment later, the figure taps the device's screen with a finger. Instantly, a massive explosion erupts inside the warehouse. Watching the flames consume the site, the hooded figure just observed the scene. Next, the figure tosses the cell phone away, getting rid of the device. Falling into the water, the phone sinks and disappears completely. With their back to the explosion, the hooded figure simply smiles and walks away from the destruction.